GTR. In its entire history, McLaren has only ever applied that famous trio of letters to 3 models.
And we brought all 3 together.
F1 GTR, P1 GTR and Senna GTR. With matching liveries, obviously, because anything else would just look like we weren't really trying. Incredibly, the F1 GTR nearly didn't happen at all, and the Senna GTR was originally designed to do much more than you might think. This is the McLaren GTR story. If this film opens your dihedral doors, then do please think about joining the Hagerty Drivers Club. You get an award-winning magazine, 24/7 flatbed roadside assistance, and myriad other benefits. To find out more, just click on the link below.
I probably should have mentioned one other thing about these 3 particular cars. They've all been road registered. GTRs on the road. Madness, but brilliant. It's fair to say you get quite a lot of looks in a Senna GTR on the road.
As you do in the other 2, all of which have been converted by Lanzante so they can roam amongst regular traffic like superheroes strolling amongst mortals.
Today, however, we're heading somewhere that we can stretch their legs a little, and also to meet the man at the heart and the start of the GTR story, Ray Bellm.
How do you go, Raymond?
Right up with Jarry again. There they go past the pits and he takes the lead going up the hill.
Now in his 70s, he had a long racing career, principally in sports cars, but also with forays into touring cars and even rallying. He also co-founded Gordon Spice Racing and Team Dynamics before serving as chairman of the BRDC. But he is inextricably linked with the McLaren F1 GTR. He instigated the F1's competition career and went on to win 11 races in the car, more than anyone else. This is the first time that Ray Bellm has been back in a 97 car in 27 years, since he last raced one in other words. Gordon Murray famously didn't want his 3-seater supercar to go racing, so just how did Bellm make it happen?
In 1994, I was racing a Porsche in the BPR, and I'd already ordered a chassis 046 road car, and I knew Ron very well, and it was at Dijon in '94 when Senna had his accident. The week after, Ron phoned me up and he said, "I'm being hounded by the press. Can I come and have lunch with you at your house?" So I said, "Yeah, you can come and stay the night or whatever." And he said, "Okay, I'll see you in a minute," because he lived 20 minutes away. And we went to have lunch, and we were talking about my chassis 046. And I said to him, "Ron, I'm going to race it because, you know, once it's mine, I can do what I like." He said, "Oh, please don't race it. Please don't race it." He said, "It'll destroy everything, you know, that we're doing." He said, "I will make you a one-off race car for £1 million plus VAT." So I said, "I can't afford it." He said, "Okay, I'll tell you what, find 3 customers and we'll make 3 cars." And later in that year, Thomas Bashir, Lindsay Jones and myself went to Magny-Cours and we signed a contract to race those 3 cars. And that was the start of it. He then sold another 3, so there were 6 cars. And by the time we got to Le Mans in '95, I think there were seven F1s. That is how the project started. And whatever anyone else says, that was the instrumental part of the deal, which was, he said, "You're going to have to buy your road car." But so I bought a race car as well, so I had a road and a race car. And that's how it started.
With a little help from the weather, the McLaren F1 run by Lanzante would famously take the victory at Le Mans at its first attempt in 1995, with F1s filling 4 of the top 5 places and cementing the car's legendary status. The Gulf McLaren of Bellm, Blundell and Sala would finish an agonising 4th, just off the podium.
Ray Bellm, surely one of your finest victories.
Yeah, I made it a bit hard for myself because I spun when I took the lead and thought, bugger it, I've now got to make up another 20 seconds. But
Bellm, however, would go on to win the BPR Global Championship in '96, but the F1 was in something of an arms race by that point, as other manufacturers entered the fray.
The 95 car was the road car stripped out.
Yeah.
There was very little changes. And it was competitive because we were racing against F40s, Venturis, Porsches, and this car was vastly superior to it. So it wasn't the fact that you were the greatest driver that you were winning, it's just you had the best car, really, which is 90% of motorsport. And then in the 96 car, because I sold my 95 car and bought a 96 car, they made lots of changes to the suspension, brakes, cooling, gearbox, the gearbox, because the weak point was always the gearbox, so they changed the gearbox. So we ran a 96 car, and it was much quicker than the 95 car. It was stiffer, it was more responsive. And then this is the 97 car, when we realised that the 96 car was no longer competitive because Porsche had the GT1 and Mercedes were there and everyone.
Which feels like a good point to have a bit of a drive. I've been lucky enough to be behind the wheel of a few F1 road cars, including Chassis 46 that was originally ordered by Ray, but I've never driven a GTR. This is Chassis 28R, the last of the 97 Longtails.
It's just extraordinary. It all once feels familiar, but definitely different to the road car. I mean, the braking for a start is so much better. It rides so much flatter and so much firmer, you can see that over the bumps. It's obviously more stripped out in here. Obviously more stripped out in here, and that's because the curb weight of these was just 920 kilos. This has got just over 600 brake horsepower. The 6.1s without the restrictor could be up to about 680. Despite the fact we're up on a big runway, still feels so fast. Wow. Interestingly, the later cars like this got a 6-litre engine instead of the 6.1. Because BMW discovered that when they were running the restrictor, it sort of tipped it into a different category being 6.1, and if they reduced it just fractionally to 6 litres, they could run a different restrictor and get better performance out of it. So things that are different about a GTR. Well, for a start, I can only have one passenger on this side because this is full of electronics.
The cabin is obviously devoid of trim. There's no air conditioning, there are fixed plexiglass windows, a roll cage, no rear view mirrors, what feels like quite a large steering wheel, and a digital dash instead of the analogue dials.
The other thing about this is obviously the gear shift. So it's the gear shift itself in this, which is a sequential. Just a little lift and straight back. Wow! The other thing about this gear shift is that when they went to sequential, Gordon Murray actually had it running the opposite way around, so that you pushed forwards to go up a gear and pulled back to go down a gear. The racing drivers hated it, kept blowing up engines and getting it wrong, so it immediately got switched around to the more normal way like this, thankfully.
Apparently Murray, with his engineer's mind, had worked out that you can punch quicker than you can pull, and you save time with quicker upshifts. Obviously, you don't save any time if you've got a blown engine though. I've also heard reports that some GTRs had rear anti-roll bars fitted, but this car, like the road cars, does without, just as Murray intended.
It's amazing just how much more you can trust it into corners. You still feel that V12 behind, but you can drive it so much more easily. The brakes are obviously so much better. They put carbon ceramics on these ones at Lanzante. The fury of this with those shorter gears. I mean, I've been lucky enough to drive a few F1 road cars, but the savagery of this. What it must have been like to race one of these at Le Mans, down the Mulsanne, just coming out, or maybe from Mulsanne towards Arnage. Wow. What a car. What a privilege.
One of the heroes of the winning car at Le Mans in 1995 was JJ Lehto, who was so fast in the wet at night that others claimed he must have had special tyres. Bellm raced with him the following year.
I like racing with JJ. He was an inspiration. He said to me at Le Mans, he gained 0.2 of a second at every hard braking point. So by the time you'd finished the lap, he was 1.5 seconds quicker, okay? And I said, JJ, how do you do this? And he said, Ray, you've got to come on the brakes really hard and then let them off, but really hard. So I tried it and I went straight on into the gravel on the Mulsanne straight. So he has a special talent or feel for the car that other people don't have.
Yeah.
And he was sensational. Even in '96, he was sensational, quick guy. It was an era, people say, it was a classic era of racing. Everyone thinks their era is classic, and the best era to race in. But this was special. It was very special. And to be at the front was a privilege.
The P1 GTR was absolutely about celebrating its forebear, with numerous paint jobs mimicking the old race cars, whether that be Harrods, Lark, or in this case, Gulf Davidoff, which seems to mimic the colours of an autumn sunset over a darkening landscape.
So fast! Talk about fast forward nearly 20 years, because that's what it feels like we've just done. So this P1 GTR is a little bit special even by P1 GTR standards, because this has got an upgraded 4-litre engine. So it's about 1,080 brake horsepower as opposed to the 986 of the standard one. And I never thought that needed more power.
But it's obviously not just the engine that is different on this compared to a regular P1 GTR, because Lanzante has implemented a few other changes like the rear bodywork and front arch louvres to visually link it to the F1 longtail that it's twinned with.
Other things you notice, so there are so many cues in here from the F1 GTR, which I love. Obviously these belts are exactly the same colour and everything. Like all the colours in here, so all the carbon, the grey Alcantara up here. The seats are exactly the same as the F1 GTR as well, so it feels like in these side windows, the plexiglass, it all just evokes the earlier car. The fact that in this as well, I've obviously got that bright orange strip down there. No, I'm not sitting in the centre, but I've always thought with P1 actually, it feels very much like you sit right at the nose of the car. You really feel like you can focus on that front end, and yet it's beautifully balanced. With all that power and torque, you'd think it might feel kind of unruly, but actually it feels so well balanced. You can use the front end grip, lean on that, but then also really steer it on the throttle as well. Brakes, fabulous, obviously. The sound is totally different. It's still loud in here. The almost turbocharged sound you get to the V8, but then particularly when you lift off over that and the turbos are extraordinary.
Like the earlier F1 GTRs, the P1 still feels like a road car that has been designed to go on track, rather than an out-and-out race car. And as a result, it retains some of the road car's approachability and fun in its handling.
I think this feels really pretty friendly to drive, actually. We're just unhinged in a straight line. I've said it before, I'll say it again, it's like sort of horizontal freefall, hits you up.
The wild acceleration is different in character to the F1 because it is so much easier to access. The initial electric punch is almost sickening, but in some ways its smoothness is less intimidating, even though the forces on your body are greater.
I love the way this looks as well, the sort of daylight opening, as they say on the side, really makes you think of the F1 from the outside. Something about the proportions, it's just stunning. Yes, this definitely feels heavier, this is over 1400 kilos. The powertrain takes care of it.
Driving the P1 demonstrates that the GTR badge really is taken seriously by modern McLaren. Arguably, there were more significant changes to this than there were with the first F1 GTRs that went to Le Mans.
It's easy to be a little bit disparaging about the two modern track-only GTRs because they don't have the race pedigree of the F1. But in some ways, they're just victims of circumstance. The F1 was incredibly lucky that it had the BPR series and Le Mans to go and race at and create all that history. Imagine how good it would have been if the regulations were different and the P1 and the Senna could have competed. How differently would we view them?
The modern GTE regulations that cars needed to conform to race at Le Mans were a serious undertaking in terms of time and money, a world away really from the rules that the F1 had to deal with. Nonetheless, McLaren did seriously consider building a car to GTE regs.
And in fact, the Senna was originally slated to go to Sarthe.
If that comes as a surprise, just have a look at the original Senna GTR that was unveiled at the Geneva Motor Show in 2018. It's a race car. The story being spun in the press release was that this was a car in the same vein as the P1 GTR, but that was all a late change, and the clues are there on the car. The huge front splitter and rear diffuser, the podium lights down the doors, the side exit exhausts, the sponsor decals. I suspect if you looked under the skin you'd have found a race sequential gearbox too. The production Senna GTR changed quite a bit from this, but there are still clear links to its unfulfilled competition car intentions, and I think that really elevates it.
When it came out, McLaren said this was the fastest car they produced outside of a Formula 1 car, and it feels so different again to the P1. It feels a lot lighter. It is lighter. 1188 kilos dry, but I'd argue it feels sort of, the difference between the two is even greater. The agility as soon as you get in, it's just total lack of inertia in the way it looks. It's like it's sort of been trained on watching fast table tennis matches or something. Just it hasn't got the outright grunt. I mean, 814 brake horsepower is nothing to be sniffed at. But it doesn't have the straight line punch, but it has got more traction than the P1. It feels like you have to kind of stay on top of the gears more than in that. Again, when you get into this, all those sort of GTR cues, you've also got the blue belts again, same seats again, all that carbon fibre. I love the fact you've got various controls up in the roof. That's super cool. It feels fun. And of course, unlike the P1, this got rid of all the active suspension, all the road car setup. This is on passive dampers, like the 720 GT3 program. This feels like a race car, and actually you want to drive it like one as well. You want to really lean on the brakes right up to an apex, because you can feel that there is a bit of understeer built in. I remember that from the road car, and obviously with the wider front end, the more grip at the front end from those tyres as well, it's not the same. It feels great through the quick stuff like this corner here. just lean on. It's such an edge to kind of lean on with the grip. But here, you really want to brake all the way up to the apex, just get it loaded up, maximise the grip on the front end. 590 pounds-feet of torque in this. Interestingly, it feels quite different to sit in compared to the P1. You feel like you sit more in the centre of the car.
Despite so many of the touch points being the same as the P1, the Senna really does feel quite different, purer in many ways.
It also doesn't sound anywhere near as turbocharged as the P1. So cool to look at now as well. It's not pretty like the other two, but you can't help but just spend ages looking around it, trying to work out where all the air goes, what it's doing, that enormous rear wing.
McLaren claims 1,000 kilos of downforce at 155 miles an hour, and you can certainly feel the drag compared to the other two as the speed increases.
Braking is just superb. It's one of the best things about this. The road car was awesome. This is awesome too. So much feel through the pedal. So much confidence with it. This feels like a race car, kind of in a different way to the F1. This feels like, in terms of just kind of how connected it is, very modern feel. Not as raw and ragged and unhinged, but just from a chassis point of view. Coming up into here, wait, hard on those brakes, all the way up to the apex, rev them in. What a thing! Wow! And it's road legal.
Talking of which, there is one thing I didn't mention about Ray Bellm. He was also the first person to have an F1 GTR road converted. The car in question was Chassis 12R, his 96 race car, which he then drove to Le Mans in 97. But how did that come about? Here's Dean Lanzante to explain.
It's hard to believe now, but the F1 short tail did fall out of trend for, albeit a very short period of time. And as we know with racing, it's a progression sport. We have the short tail F1, we go to second year of short tail F1, and then the third season was a long tail. So the short tail was...
So that was 97.
Exactly, 97 is when the long tail came out. So the 95 and 96 car, you could upgrade a 95 car to 96, but that was it.
Yeah.
You weren't going to stretch it to the following year. So there was really nothing to do with those. And I know now it seems crazy, and the values weren't there so much. But McLaren had, on the back of the celebration of winning Le Mans, done the 5 LMs, which was, when we look back on it, probably the closest thing that anyone had ever put a track car on the road or done something of that type. So that was what kind of triggered, well, should we...
There's only 5 of them, so yeah, I suppose, yeah.
Exactly, and there was a lot of demand for that, even though 3 of them went to one owner, and then the other 2 get split up. There was a lot of interest in it even then. Obviously not the values, but a lot of interest in the LM. And when Ray Bellm had finished racing in '96 with the F1, got his long tail to do the following season, he was kind of like, what do we do with this thing? And that was when we thought, do we put it on the road?
Yeah. Was it easy to convert? Was it?
It was. Regulation wasn't as clear then, so there was a lot more interpretation. Now it's much more factual when you do these single approvals of cars. It's just a lot clearer now, a lot stricter now for sure. So we kind of went in a bit blind and thinking, hopefully this will sort of get through. And also the budgets weren't there then, because the values weren't crazy. As now these, what we're doing now with these new track cars, the values are so much higher. There's justification to really spend and do everything absolutely 100%. So then we had to be marginal with what we did.
And what sort of things are you doing, sort of, obviously then, but now when you convert, whether it's an F1 or the sort of the P1 and Senna GTRs, what, I think people want to know, what do you have to do to get them road legal?
To make either a race or a track car road legal, you have two main factors. One is a legality standpoint, and the second one is usability.
Yeah.
So I can put something on the road completely legal with emissions and sharp edges and all the rest of it. Mm-hmm. It doesn't legally have to have radiator cooling fans, but it won't work.
Yeah.
It doesn't legally have to have soft suspension and be compliant or have lift systems or have reasonable turning circles. But so legally it will get through, but it's not usable. So there are clear two definitions that we have to work on. Yeah. One is to get it legally through, and the second one is the practicalities of what an owner will want out of a car.
And presumably that second bit varies from customer to customer depending on how extreme they still want it to remain on the road.
It does, and I think with the F1, if we start with that, you've got quite a difference over an F1 GTR versus track cars, because you have history, you have heritage, you have some significance and some importance. So you don't want to be going and chopping up and drilling holes or changing something that is so special for what it is. Yeah. And there is this purity about it. People are driving something that has driven down the Mulsanne Straight or
they
won races.
Road racer, don't need quite
exactly.
Yeah.
So there's something about it. Who's driven it in the past? There's a lot more emotion about a racing car because of what it's done. So you have to be very mindful of that. With a track car, for a start, a lot of track cars that manufacturers build, they do build to quite a high level of finish now. So it's not like an old racing car that's been beaten around, and they are at a good level. So the interiors, for example, have nice carbon finishes and nice trim and stuff. So it's not as raw as a racing car, which is one purpose, which is a tool to be fast.
Yeah.
Fascinating stuff, I hope you'll agree. And with that, well, there's really only one thing left to do.
I had to end with driving the F1 GTR on the road. How could you not? Amazingly, this is not quite as intimidating on the road as I thought it might be. You've got all that lovely torque from the 6-litre V12, which has always made the F1 such a flexible, usable road car. Gear shift, obviously, you just have to make sure you can go back down the box when you reach junctions. I was worried that somehow some of the GTR-ness might have been taken out of these by being road registered, but not a bit of it. It's amazing how you can drive this on the road. You can drive it on the road, and it feels all right. And yet, also, it still feels just like a race car. It feels like it can turn up on a grid. And I love that. It reminds me of sort of 1950s race cars where they would drive them, do something like the Mans, race them, and then even drive them home again. There's something so cool about that.
It really sums up those three letters, GTR, Gran Turismo Racing, that intoxicating mix of road and track.
I just feel like mimicking Ray Bellm now, driving all the way through to France. I love those downshifts.